Like, they are the apocalypse, but they apocalypse themselves out of a good normal life into jail. My boobs look uneven.
That's okay. Aren't they supposed to be?
Why do you keep saying aren't they supposed to be?
Like on women. Yeah, like one testicle on men is generally...
I don't care about your testicles.
And then on women...
Your testicles aren't on camera. Our last video covered all of the unsettling similarities between Lori Daybell and Ruby Franke. In this video, I want to talk about some of the parallels between their dumpy, frumpy counterparts, Chad Daybell and Jodi Hildebrandt. If you're here because you watched our last video, thank you so much. Way more people watched our last video about Lori and Ruby than typically watch our videos. We thought that the video that was going to get us a lot of attention would have been the one where we literally proved the existence of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I also want to acknowledge up top that in the last video talking about Lori and Ruby, it was really hard not to call them Lorby. Juby.
And Booby.
And Booby and Lorby and Borby. And in this episode, it's going to be really hard not to say Chody, just Chad and Jodi. I'm already kind of doing it. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Media outlets have both described Chad and Jodi as being cult leaders. Both of their supposed cults look quite different. Jodi's connections group is really a Facebook page more than it is a cult. But a lot of her former clients have described her as having a lot of cult leader characteristics. Through connections, she espouses a type of therapy that usually is targeted at families that is religiously informed. Her particular brand focuses on embracing truth and running from distortion.
I invite you to join me every Saturday to learn about principles of truth. The base being honest, responsible, and humble, and how you can use your choices to empower you to recognize distortion and recognize truth and reframe those distortions, those lies, back into what the reality is, back into the truth, so that your life can become calm. Your life will become clear, and you will be able to have connection and peace.
Jodi's former clients / victims reveal that she had a real preoccupation with telling people that they had sex addictions or that they were drug addicts. Even many of her clients have said that that really wasn't the case. She also seems to have had a tendency to pathologize really normal sexual behavior. I got a lot of this from Mormon Stories podcast, but apparently she would take any pornography viewing or masturbation as indication of a sex addiction. Oh, and the reason why Jodi. There it is. The reason why Jodi was able to get so as far as she did as a therapist, even though she's clearly pretty off, in my opinion, is she was getting referrals from Mormon bishops. So in the Mormon church, if you're deemed to be in need of therapy, you will be referred to a Mormon-approved therapist and maybe even have your therapy paid for by your Mormon bishop. And she was just on that list of approved Mormon therapists. And I guess all you needed to do to be on that list was to just say, hey, I'm super Mormon. So Chad and Lori's group, like I said, followed a more traditional cult structure. Chad believed that he and Lori would be leading the chosen 144,000 to prepare the world for Christ's return to earth. He gets the number 144,000 from the book of Revelation. If you didn't know, there's this strain within Mormonism that's really preoccupied with Doomsday. I think that's due in part to some of Joseph Smith's teachings. Just as Joseph Smith saw the Book of Mormon as being a continuation of the Bible, Chad Daybell believed that his teachings were a continuation of the LDS doctrine. But Chad added a whole lot of weird stuff in there. Like, he believed in rebirth. He believed that when you were reborn, you could choose to come back as a dark or light spirit. Like I mentioned in the previous video, they believed that a spirit could leave someone's body and then they could be taken over by a zombie or a demonic slug. And then...
A slug?
And then in order for the person's spirit to move on to heaven, that person's human body had to be killed. It's so stupid. Look, the only thing you really the only thing you really need to know about his cult, about the Chad Daybell belief system, is they believed, and I quote, "Spells and curses in Harry Potter are real and require great focused will to use." Lori and Chad would tell their friends that they could travel via a magical portal.
No.
One of the cult members, Zulema Pastenes, believed that she could control the weather. So this was a group of people that was really willing to believe anything. You threw any little idea at them and they were ready. They were ready to glom on. Like a bunch of little slugs.
Yeah.
On the surface, these belief systems don't really have that much in common, except that they're both a bunch of poorly thought out, made up garbage. But if you think about it, they both use these self-serving narratives to put themselves at the center of their own little universes. And that's kind of all that really matters. That's the bottom line. And that's why they don't have to put a lot of thought or effort or editing or articulation into their belief system, because that's the bottom line. Dark spirits are people that Chad and Lori don't like, and distortion is anything or anyone that Jodi doesn't like. In the last video, I also mentioned that Jodi's niece pointed out that Jodi too had an obsession with Doomsday, even though it didn't really play. Even though I don't think that really factored into her whole connection belief system. It was a preoccupation of hers.
Believed that her work, that she was combating Satan every day in preparation for the second coming. Like, the second coming is so close. I'm like going to be the one of the people that, welcomes God back, or
ushers in the second coming of Jesus. Yeah.
But, and again, these are not theoretical. These are not like hypothetical. She believed these in literal, actual. This is all very literal to her. That God literally was going to come and thank her for all of her hard work.
Both Jodi and Chad are authors. Jodi put out a book called You Are Not Enough. I've read bits of You Are Not Enough. As you might be able to guess by the title, she is a terrible writer. It's pretty hard to get through or make any sense of what she's saying. And even though she does describe truth and distortion at some length, I can't really give a coherent description of either of those concepts because neither can Jodi Hildebrandt. Here's a section where she describes distortion. The single core component that creates disconnection is called distortion. Distortion has been called other names such as shame, lies, or dishonesty. Distortion means distorting the truth. Any thought, word, idea, belief, or perception that is not a truth will be a distortion. That's it. It's that simple. We discussed what truth is and how truth is different from the concept of true earlier. Is it okay?
I'm trying to understand those words.
It's
the true and the truiness.
The truth of the true is the truth of the truiness.
What the hell is she talking about?
Other thing that I would say is a real hallmark of Jodi Hildebrandt's writing is her intense female friendships. I met a woman years ago and began the process of getting to know her. We both engaged in peripheral sharing of our stories about life, and then she began to be more willing to risk with me. She told me of her significant emotional pain and how she's not been able to surrender it because she doesn't know how. We continued over the next several months talking about her experiences, and I began to risk as well, as I realized she was a woman of integrity, honesty, responsibility, and humility, and boundaries. Because we both chose to live our lives in truth rather than distortion, took time to assess for safety, and risked appropriately with one another, we now have a stable, truly loving friendship. It's like, oh, so you made a friend. It's so bizarre, the things that she thinks are important to include. In the autobiographical sections of her book, Jodi does seem to be struggling with the aftermath of some childhood sexual abuse. She also, I think, is coming to terms with the lack of familial warmth that she experienced. She definitely needs help. I don't know that she's in a position to offer help to anyone. Chad Daybell is also an author, and he wrote a series of Mormon-inspired sci-fi future fantasy books. He seems to have paid for reviews because they have like 3 to 4 star ratings on Amazon and Goodreads, or he just had his friends write reviews. Jodi Hildebrandt only has 1.5 stars because it's been lambasted by people who know of her arrests and who want to express their frustration at her choices, the choices that she made out of distortion, that moving away from truth. Chad Daybell is one of those guys where I swear he has written more books than he's read. They are unreadable, totally unreadable. Not that I would read them. I didn't want to pay to sample them because I didn't want to risk putting any money towards his legal defense fund. So I'll just read a description of one of his books. This is called The Great Gathering. This is the synopsis. In the near future, Tad and Emma North and their children live in a United States that is growing increasingly wicked. The Norths and their extended family notice that many Latter-day Saints are being deceived by alluring temptations, and they wonder how much longer the world will allow American society to continue its downward spiral. Then comes an invitation from church leaders for the saints to gather together. This invitation isn't well accepted and even openly mocked, but those faithful church members who trust the Lord soon find themselves accomplishing monumental tasks. Join these humble yet heroic saints as they embark on an unprecedented journey to build New Jerusalem. Sound familiar?
He had a charming charisma about him that was warm and inviting and really pulled people in.
Both Jodi and Chad remind me of Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Men in Black, the alien that kills a farmer and then uses his skin to make a human suit and goes around wreaking havoc. It just doesn't seem like they are at ease with normal human interactions. Like anytime Chad shows up in court, his demeanor is just off-putting.
Daybell, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you
I
hear
need
me?
you to speak a little bit louder, Mr. Daybell.
Yes, I can hear you.
He has this really monotone way of speaking.
Anything at all you want to say to them?
Grateful for any support. We just have to wait for the legal process to work through.
Which brings me to my next point. How is it that Chad and Jodi were able to bring anyone in to their circle? How is it that they were able to form these tight, destructive bonds with Lori and Ruby, respectively? I was watching a live stream by Zelf on the Shelf, which are 2 ex-Mormons, and they were talking about Jodi Hildebrandt and how one of her ex-client describes her as charismatic and how that might be hard for people on the outside to understand.
The truth is, I ran over the cat.
Like, in what world is Jodi Hildebrandt charismatic? And they were explaining that in Mormon circles, there is perhaps a dearth of charisma.
She must have more charisma in person. Yeah, I mean, to me, Jodi Hildebrandt doesn't read as someone but
well, that's what I was going to say, is that Mormon culture is actually very starved for charismatic.
Yeah.
Like think of how nuts everybody goes for Jeffrey R. Holland because he has an ounce of charisma. And he's a rhetorician, right? He knows how to speak.
And he's confident.
But a lot of the leadership is actually pretty dry and bland.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying as Mormons. That's what they're saying, not me. That's their opinion, not mine. This is obviously just me speculating, but both Jodi and Chad put their partners on a pedestal. Like, Jodi describes her friendships always with women, and they're very intense, and she really loves her friend. And then when Chad describes Lori, he describes her as being this hot cheerleader, like she's this kind of ideal woman. And with both of those, I think that they both demonstrate this really adolescent type of fixation, this very like immature approach to close relationships where this person is just the center of your world in a way, yeah, that just feels very high school. And I think that Ruby and Lori were maybe both people who were looking for that kind of validation. Like they both maybe had inflated egos. People are going to throw around the word narcissist. They confirmed their suspicions that they were meant for something more, that they were meant for more than just ordinary Mormon motherhood. They're these extraordinary people meant for extraordinary things. We're re-recording this last bit at night because when we originally did it, the audio somehow didn't quite pan out, and we are blaming that on the baby? The baby. Wanted to wrap up the discussion of their similarities by bringing up what Hidden True Crime Podcast brought up on one of their recent live streams. The fact that Jodi spoke at an Eternal Core conference.
I just ran over Cat.
Eternal Core conferences were put on by Tom Harrison, a Mormon therapist. Tom Harrison is believed to be the inspiration for the prophetic voice featured in Visions of Glory, which is a book that some have described as Mormon fanfic that's supposed to foretell a Mormon version of the apocalypse, and it's presented as like these are real visions of things that might actually come to pass. Visions of Glory laid the framework for Chad and Lori's belief system. There's this kind of preoccupation with Doomsday that seems to be connecting all of these problematic Mormons. If I've left out any strange things that Chad and Jodi have in common, feel free to comment them below. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, if you could like the video, that really helps the algorithm, and subscribe, obviously, if you haven't done that already. And yeah, let us know in the comments any future videos you'd like to see. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Wow.